Hello everyone and welcome to ECO232. In this video we will be covering Chapter 3 where we will be looking at the goods market. Chapter 3 looks at equilibrium in the goods market and the determination of output. It focuses on the interaction between demand, production and income. It shows how fiscal policy affects output. Also keep in mind that in Chapter 3, 4 and 5 we're dealing with a short run. And we also touched on what the short run is in Chapter 2. And in the short run, demand determines output, and many factors affect demand from consumer confidence to fiscal and monetary policy. The composition of GDP. If we want to understand what determines the demand for goods, it makes sense to decompose aggregate output or GDP. Output and production are the same term, so there is no room for using one or the other. Firstly, consumption, which we will denote by the letter C, are private consumptions by households, so this ranges from food to new cars, etc. Second comes investment, which is denoted by the letter I, and this is private investment by firms. Investment is the sum of residential and non-residential investment. Residential investment refers to property, so the purchase of new houses or flats by people. Non-residential investment refers to machinery, so the purchase of new machines by firms. Also note that to most people, investment refers to the purchase of assets like gold or shares. However, economists use investment to refer to the purchase of new capital goods such as machines and buildings. Third comes government spending, and it is denoted by the letter G. This represents the purchase of goods and services by government, so that is the national, provincial and local governments. These goods ranges from supplying school textbooks to building roads. Note that this does not include government transfers like social grants. Then we look at exports, and it's denoted by the letter X, which is the purchases of South African consumption and capital goods and services by foreigners. So for example, South African apples are exported to the Netherlands. Then we have imports denoted by IM, which is the purchases of foreign consumption and capital goods and services by South Africans. For example, capital goods like cars are imported from China. If exports exceeds or is greater than imports, then we have a trade surplus. However, if exports are less than imports, there is a trade deficit. The demand for goods. Denote the total demand for goods by Z, and using the decomposition of GDP we spoke about, we can write Z as Z is the sum of C plus I plus G plus X minus IM. We need to think about the determinants of Z, so let's look at the assumptions. We assume that all firms produce the same good. We assume firms are willing to supply any amount of the good at a given price level P. We assume that the economy is closed, so this implies that there are no imports and exports, so both imports and exports are zero. Remember, we use these assumptions to simplify the reality so that we can deal with the situation at hand. The demand for goods Z is simply the sum of consumption plus investment plus government spending. Consumption. We will now discuss each of these three components C, I, and G. So let's start with consumption. Consumption decisions depend on many factors, but the main one is surely income, or more precisely disposable income, denoted by YD. Disposable income is the income that remains once consumers have paid their taxes. There is a positive relationship between C, or consumption, and YD, which is disposable income, since when disposable income goes up, people buy more goods. We said that C denotes consumption and YD disposable income. So we can then write C is equal to C and in brackets YD, and at the bottom here we have a plus sign. So this is a formal way of stating that consumption is a function of disposable income, and the function CYD is called the consumption function. The positive sign below YD reflects the fact that when disposable income increases, so does consumption. The relation between consumption and disposable income is given by the simpler consumption function, which is C is equal to CO plus C1 YD, which is also equal to CO plus C1 Y minus T. And we know that YD is disposable income, so it is income minus taxes. So let's unpack the above. CO is autonomous consumption, and it is what people would consume if their disposable income was equal to zero. How can people have positive consumption if their income is equal to zero? They just save. They consume, for example, by borrowing. CO is the intercept on the y-axis. The parameter C1 is called marginal propensity to consume. It is the proportion of disposable income spent on consumer goods and services. It is the slope of the consumption function. So let's say for every rand earned, you spend 75 cents. So C1 would equal to 0.75. C1 is always between 0 and 1, and people are likely to consume only part of the disposable income and save the rest. The relation between consumption and disposable income that was shown by the equation is now drawn in this figure. Because it is a linear relation, it is represented by a straight line. Its intercept with the vertical axis is CO. Its slope is C1. Because C1 is less than 1, the slope of the line is less than 1. Investment. Models have two types of variables. Some variables depend on other variables in the model and are therefore explained within the model. Variables like these are called endogenous, for example, like consumption. Other variables are not explained within the model, but are instead taken as given, and variables like these are called exogenous, for example, like investment. We will take investment as given and write I is equal to I bar. Putting a bar on investment is a way to remind us that we take investment as given. The assumption we make is that we will assume that investment does not respond to changes in production. Government spending. The third component is government spending. Taxes and government spending describes the fiscal policy. Just as we did for investment, we will take G and T as exogenous. When taxes is equal to government spending, we have a balanced budget. When government spending is less than taxes, we have budget surplus. When government spending is greater than taxes, we have a budget deficit. The budget report is given by the Minister of Finance in February each year, and the current Minister of Finance is Tito Mboweni. Okay, so due to time constraints, I will cut this video here, but I will be back with part 2. Thank you.